Hey guys, welcome back to My Understanding. I appreciate you guys joining me in today. We got a fun one. Um, Before you ask, no, these are not prescription glasses, but they make me feel smart, so I like to wear them sometimes. Um, so, yeah, glad you guys made it in. Yeah, today we've got a fun one. Today we're going to be talking about kind of like different types of training regimens, how they affect fat loss, and kind of like the best routine that you can find for one. It's going to be a very chaotic one because this is something that, like, as I was like studying, for some reason, my mind was just not wanting to like connect with it, and I had to do so much like research on things, only to find out it was like very like it was. I don't know how to put this. It was a lot more simple than I was trying to make it. It was one of those things I spent so much time like looking over, doing research on, and I was like, it's just not connecting. And then finally, like I read over like I read over one study, and it was one specific study that kind of just stuck out, and it just put it in very like basic terms, and I was like, I get it. I feel like I've just wasted my life. I'm not going to get this time back, but but it was a really cool. Honestly, I learned a lot during this, and so that's partially why I'm so excited to share it with you guys. Is because it was, like I said, it kind of came down to be a somewhat simple answer, um, something that I already knew, and I just don't think I understood the full like science behind it, basically, and I didn't quite understand like how it all worked together. It was like I had a lot of pieces of like just a wheel, and let's put it all together. So yeah, yeah, I'm I am very excited to go over this. So I'll kind of jump into it with you guys. I appreciate you bearing with me for right now. Been a great day for me, just very chaotic and crazy, as is my personality right now. So yeah. So one of the first things that I want to kind of start with you guys is going over the different types of cardio and just training styles that I'm going to be discussing. And so we're going to be going over your zone 1 through 3 cardio, and we'll be touching on like zone 4 and 5 as well, like your heart rate zones. But the main three that we're kind of focused on, I would say, is your zones like 1 through 3. So your steady state cardio. It's known as the steady state because it is meant to be your zones 1 and 2 primarily are meant to be, heart rate zones that you could maintain for most of the day, or at least a very prolonged period of time, like a few hours. It is basically, you're going on a walk, maybe you're going on like a light jog, um, which again, sometimes jogging for people can be very intense, which is why we're talking about like an easier form of it. That's why I include walking in it. So just walking, a light jog, or maybe you're going for like a long bike ride. So it is those low heart rate zones that you can maintain for a long period of time. That is the key to keep in mind. Then you also have the other style of training, which is HIIT. So high intensity interval training is what we're going to be going over. So that is where it's like short bursts of just all out energy. You're giving it your all for a very short period of time. And then that is followed up with, a certain amount of recovery time afterwards before you jump back into it. That's going to be a very fun one to talk about just because it has a very wide variety of like progressions that you can use with it, as well as regressions. So there's a lot of different styles to that type of training. So I'm looking forward to kind of getting into that as well. The last style that I want to talk about in this grouping, I would say, is kind of along the lines of basically it's like strength training, circuit training, or like AMRAP. So AMRAP stands for basically as many reps as possible or as many rounds as possible, depending on who you ask. Um, so basically resistance training in an idea, I would say. So those are going to be kind of the three that we go over, as well as how each of them affects fat loss specifically in your body, not necessarily just weight loss, though we do touch on that. But I wanted to kind of go over which of those three helps your body to adapt at burning fat most efficiently. And so to start us off, I want to go over those first three that we were talking about, or the first one that we were talking about. So zones 1 to 3 cardio is the first one. And it's just that the idea of steady state, something you can maintain for a long time. So the interesting thing with this is, out of all of the different styles of training that I'm talking about today, when it comes to immediate fat loss, that is by far the best. So there is, if you were to take, like an hour to 2 hour like time frame, or even honestly probably like a whole day, I would be willing to say that steady state cardio will burn the most amount of fat out of any other form. So more than HIIT, more than, strength training in a given short kind of time period like that, from, an hour to a day. Steady state cardio, that zone 1 to 3, will burn the most amount of body fat. Not necessarily weight as a whole, but just body fat as that specific thing. Part of the reason for that is because with it being in such a low heart rate zone, your heart isn't having to work super hard to kind of maintain that, beats per minute, basically. And so it allows your body to not be getting strained. It actually promotes recovery. If you've seen some of my past podcast episodes, we go over that a lot, of like how active recovery, keeping your heart rate in like a lower heart rate zone, really helps to promote blood flow and just overall helps your recovery process. So it's a really cool thing. It's so many benefits to steady state cardio. And it's one of the most it is the most beneficial for immediate kind of fat loss, where you're just trying to focus on just burning fat right in that single day. You're just immediate result right there. Boom. Okay. That's the most amount of fat. But I want to not get overhyped to it, because there are still amazing benefits to the other portion, or the other exercise, the other training styles. Words can be complicated. Not really. It's just me. But anyway, so that is one of the things that I think is just incredible about the steady state cardio, is just that per time frame, if we're talking the hour to the day, it is going to burn you the most amount of fat. So it is a really good one. It also helps to just promote recovery, like I was talking about, helps you de-stress. So it has a lot of benefits to it other than just fat loss. That's what kind of makes it so incredible. So I want to kind of, again, go to the next thing. So one of the other things that I want to talk about, like I mentioned, was kind of HIIT. So high intensity interval training. There are a lot of different avenues to this. So the biggest, I'm going to start out kind of very simple, just keep it very simple, and then we'll expand here in a second. But basically, all HIIT means is all, I think I combined the two. I said all HIIT, but I meant to say all it. Anyway, sorry, very sidetracked here today. All HIIT means basically is you are giving it your all. You are going, you're trying to get your heart rate up as high as possible, trying to get it to be your max for a very short period of time. Kind of think of sprints, or if you're on an air bike, you're just going all out, and you're doing that for a short period of time, because that is not something you can keep up over a long time like steady state cardio. It is just not humanly possible. And so it is meant to be jump that heart rate up, get it as high as you possibly can for that short period of time, to really just spike the amount of energy and calories that your body is burning, and then drop it back down, get it into that low zone 1 to 2 range, so that way your body is then starting to try and come down off of that high, and then immediately kind of jump it back up. And you do that in rounds, basically. So you're trying to focus on cool, let's get it up, drop it down, up, drop it down. You're doing that over a certain period of time. It's usually not very long. Typically, if you are doing HIIT in a structured environment and it is, regulated by time, usually it should not be any more than around I want to say 15 to 30 minutes, because it is just that intense. There are different ways to go about improving yourself when you're doing that, in the terms of timing. Basically, it's not something you necessarily want to do or try and do for a full hour. because that's just not the purpose of it. If you're able to do it, for a full hour, the reality is you're probably not pushing yourself hard enough, because it is meant to be something that you do for a short period of time because your body is just getting out. When you get your heart rate into those zones 4 and 5, your body is not able to produce enough oxygen throughout the rest of your body, which causes the lactate buildup, which is kind of like that sore feeling, basically, when you're getting a really big pump and your legs are just completely sore, they feel exhausted. When you're in that zone 4 to 5, that's what kind of produces that feeling, is you're just not getting enough oxygen to all of your cells. And so if you're doing, sprints or an air bike, your legs are just feeling extremely just full of blood. They're getting really pumped and just completely fried out. And then your oxygen levels as well. You're probably gasping for air. You're really sweating really hard, struggling to kind of recover. And it's not something that you should be able to maintain for a long period of time. That's why it's called high intensity interval training. So there's lots of like classes out there that do, kind of versions or like their own renditions of this. There's like Orange Theory, kind of, you want to think of like big group classes like that advertise, HIIT. And it is HIIT to like an extent, I would say. Typically because of the way that they're set up, there's not really any, I would say, big rest periods enough. Like there's not a consistent amount of rest periods. It's kind of you're swapping exercises, and that's like your rest, And they usually go for 45 minutes, sometimes an hour. And typically, the way that it has been structured and the way people tend to go about it, it is not exactly what I would call HIIT. A lot of times at the beginning, you're getting that heart rate up there because you are pushing yourself at first, but then your body just gets so fatigued so quickly because you're not breathing enough, you're not allowing your body to rest and kind of recover at all, that your heart rate can't maintain that high spot. And so it drops down, and it levels out usually, I would say, around like your zone 3, which is, it's up there. That's still somewhat high. And you can maintain zone 3, typically not for super long, but it is usually around, I want to say, few hours. But it is high enough to where, you're going to be sweating, your heart is beating, and, you're feeling pretty tired from it. And so that technically doesn't classify as, high intensity interval training. It does consider a different form of what would be known as HIIT, which is just high intensity training. So I would consider it that. So it is still, it is intense. It's not light by any means, but I wouldn't necessarily classify it myself. And, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure there's probably a lot of debate around it, but I would say that it is just more high intensity rather than high intensity interval training. And so that is something to keep in mind, is when you're doing that for that long period of time, you're not getting your heart rate into the zones you need to, and then dropping it back down to let that body recover even for that short period of time so that you can get it back up high. So that's the whole key of it, is getting that up and down. Whereas with those classes, you tend to be up and then somewhat down and then pretty level. So the most important part of HIIT and the why behind that specifically is a big thing, is because it produces a decent amount of what's called EPOC. So EPOC. That is known as, I hate this name so much. It's just, I don't know why, but every time I try and say this, I almost always mess it up. So hopefully I don't. But it is excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. I think I got it. Basically what it means is the amount of oxygen that your body is now trying to produce after you're done exercising. So after you've done your HIIT, after you've done your strength training, whatever you're doing, EPOC is basically your body saying, hey, okay, we just did a lot and we are struggling to kind of maintain our, homeostasis, our balance. And so it is now trying to take in a lot more oxygen. It's trying to work overtime to really get your body back to baseline. So think of it like, as I was doing my studies, I saw a really good example. It's like, okay, you've been driving for a long time. You kind of turn your car off. It's still warm. It's not immediately cooled back down to when it was when you first got in. it takes a while to get back there. It's pretty warm and maybe even hot. It needs time to cool down. Basically, what's happening to your body. You did this really intense exercise. Now you're trying to let your body come back and like get back to baseline. The only difference is that we can't necessarily if we turned our entire body off, we'd be dead. So, there's that. So instead, what we're doing is allowing our body to rest. Going to sleep is a great thing. Don't recommend doing it right after a HIIT workout. Probably not great, just because your body is still highly stressed out. So that sleep would not be super great. But like making sure you're eating, drinking water, and then allowing your body to recover will help with that. I did get slightly sidetracked. EPOC is your body trying to get back to baseline. That can take anywhere from 3 hours to 24 hours, is what most of the studies have shown so far. Again, in the future, that may change as more studies come out, as more people are tested. But for right now, the studies show around 3 to 24 hours, depending on how intense you push your body. So that's the fun part. As you train in your HIIT, it produces something called EPOC, which is your body trying to get back to baseline. As your body is trying to get back to baseline, it is in those zone 1 to zone 2 heart rate zones. And so it is burning fat while it's in those zones. But, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. I apologize. We're going to take one quick step back. So when it's one very small step back. I lied. When your body is trying to get back to baseline, EPOC produces I want to say it was 6 to 15% increase in basically caloric necessity. So the amount of calories that your body needs is being increased when you train in that zone 4 and 5 intensity. What that basically means is you are increasing your total daily energy expenditure. So, and your metabolism is increasing. So the amount of calories that your body needs on a day-to-day basis is slowly going up every time you are doing a very high intensity interval training like that, and you get into that zone 4 and 5. And so I kind of gave you a little teaser already, but it has to do with like fat burning. So we'll get into that here in a bit. But that's what kind of makes HIIT so cool, is that it produces EPOC to the highest extent, higher than any other form of training, which really benefits just the human nature in general and weight loss, because it means you're going to need to eat more. So when you're doing that high intensity training, your body needs more calories to just maintain the muscle mass, give you the energy to do those intenses. Nice. To do that high intensity workouts. So EPOC is an incredible thing because it's your body trying to make up for what you were lacking. So we are natural adapters. Our bodies want to have a baseline and help us adapt to our environment. So yeah, it's an incredible thing. It really is. It's super cool. So I appreciate you guys bearing with me on all the chaos. So we're going to kind of take another step forward, and we're going to talk about the strength training that we just got into, or that we're about to talk about. So we've talked about our zone 1 to 3 steady state cardio. We just went over HIIT. So now with strength training, or it could be like even circuit training or AMRAP. So depending on how your style of working out, they, I would say, are next up in line. They are another form of incredible exercise and training to burn fat. So the nice part is they are kind of like small differences, I would say, similar to like your zone 1 to 3. Zone 1, you'll burn a certain amount of fat to carbs. Zone 2, you burn another certain amount to carbs, but a little bit less. And same with your zone 3. It's a little bit less fat, a little more carbs. So it kind of has like that degradation the higher that heart rate zone goes. The nice part with strength training, or circuit or AMRAP, somewhat similar. It really kind of revolves around the intensity of your exercise and how hard you're pushing yourself. So if you are, lifting weights, you're doing, maybe like a 5x5, 5 sets, 5 reps, you're just pushing it really hard. you're trying to, just go intense and you're just giving it your all, that will get your heart rate up somewhat high. Probably not quite as high as doing a hit training would be, but still pretty high. And so you are, by pushing yourself that hard, you are still producing a certain amount of EPOC. It is definitely less than doing hit, but you are still producing a certain amount, which is a great thing because in addition to that, you're also building muscle. And if there's one thing that I want you guys to take away from all of this as well, is building muscle is going to be one of the most metabolically advantageous things you can do. Anytime you are putting on weight, mainly if it is muscle, your body has more mass that it needs to provide energy to. That is the main key. And so that's why you'll notice whether, like, from somebody who's smaller than me to somebody my size to somebody bigger than me, the amount of food that we need to intake changes. The bigger we are, and regardless of where it's from, we'll need more energy. Now, if we do increase our size and it all is from muscle, you will need to intake even more energy than if it was a bigger size just from body fat, because your muscle requires a lot more energy than body fat does. And so that is the thing to keep in mind. So putting on more muscle is almost never going to be a bad thing. Our bodies thrive the more muscle we have. It allows us to eat more. It allows us to fuel our bodies, to carry ourselves better, and to burn more fat naturally. Because as we are just going throughout our days, we're naturally kind of sitting in one of those lower heart rate zones. And so our body's going to be burning more fat than anything else. So the more muscle you have, the more calories, especially from fat, that your body is going to want to burn/need. And so that's what makes strength training so good. AMRAP and circuit training, still very similar. I would almost put them kind of in a level between like strength training and hit, because like with circuit training, it's kind of a hit, except you're adding weights. And you just have to be careful, because if your weights are too heavy, your muscles might get more tired before your cardiovascular system does. And so even though you're getting your heart rate up, it still isn't quite high enough. And so you're kind of getting in that middle range. But again, you're still getting to a point where it's probably producing a little bit of EPOC. And then AMRAP, same thing. You're getting out as many reps as you possibly can in a certain amount of time. It's kind of like circuit training. You take breaks when you deem necessary. There's no real structure to it other than, okay, we know we're doing these sets of exercises until we can't anymore. And so not until we can't anymore, until the time is done. And so you're really trying to push through all of it and find rest when you can, which good, but that's kind of like those group classes again, where it's like you're just going. So the reality is you probably got it up originally and then it kind of dropped back down and now it's just level. And so you're not giving your body as much intensity as it needs to produce that higher amount of EPOC. So strength training, circuit training, and AMRAP, still all fantastic. Simply due to the fact that even with the circuit and AMRAP, you are still building muscle. So your body is still tearing down, the cells, really trying to build back up. And so it provides you with the opportunity to grow that hit and steady state cardio don't necessarily get you. A steady state cardio, especially. As good as it is for recovery, it does not really do anything at all for helping you build muscle other than the recovery aspect. So those are kind of like the three different like segments that I wanted to kind of, I guess, just bring to our attention that we're going to be talking about even more. Is, you have your steady state cardio, great for recovery, great for that immediate fat burning, burns the most within like the hour strictly from fat. Does not give us EPOC, does not help us with muscle building. HIT. It burns fewer calories from fat in that immediate time span, because you're not spending enough time in that zone 1 and 2 to really burn a lot. But you are spending a lot of time in that zone, or you're still spending a lot of time in zone 4 and 5, which is very intense, which produces EPOC that steady state does not. So it allows us in the long run to burn fat that we aren't in that necessary moment. Then you've got your strength training, circuit AMRAP, where we might not produce as much EPOC as HIIT is, but we are still building up muscle more so. I would personally say I think you're building more muscle doing strength training than you are in HIIT. And so it kind of has like three different like pieces to a puzzle basically. And that's what's so cool about this. And that's why all this studying has been so much fun, is because it's like you're learning about all these different like pieces to the puzzle, and they form somehow, and you're trying to figure out, it's like, okay, well, this is good here, this is good here, and this one's good here. So what the heck? All right, what's going on? What am I missing? And so that's kind of what I want to touch into next a little bit, is basically you have all these different styles that, burn fat at different like increments. So how does that, which one is best? Right? That's the big question. Which one is best? Which one is the one I need to focus on? And that's the fun part, is because there really is no single method that wins. If you're looking for the best method for fat loss, there is no single method that wins on its own. You can make the argument that certain ones are better than others, but you have to be very specific, because it is very much person dependent on, how much time you have, what equipment you have available, what type of workouts you like doing. Because if you don't like pushing yourself super hard, then obviously, HIIT and strength training might not be best for you. But you're going to run into other problems down the road. So, with no single method being the best on its own is the big key. I would personally say, in my own research, studying, and also just experience as well, HIIT tends to give you guys the most bang for your buck if we're talking about like per minute and just time saving. So if you are looking to try and just do like one thing, and you're trying to figure out, hey, I just want to know what burns it the fastest. Maybe you have a time constraint and you really don't have a lot of time to work out each day, then HIIT's probably going to be your best in that structured routine, making sure that, hey, you are focused on getting that heart rate up, dropping it back down, getting it back up, and dropping it down. And I think what makes HIIT partially so good is the fact that there are different, like I mentioned earlier, progressions and regressions. So for somebody who might be a beginner, you could do, like a 1-to-3 ratio of time wise. So let's say you do, you're going 30 seconds all out as hard as you can, pushing on the air bike or sprints, something like that. And then you take 90 seconds to rest. So you're doing 30 seconds. That's your 1. 90 seconds is your 3. You're taking that 90 seconds, not just lollygagging, but you're really focusing on trying to control your breath. Maybe grab like a sip of water every now and then if you need it, but holding on to that structured routine until that feels somewhat easy. Then you can always maybe jump it back down and do like a 2-to-1, where it's like, hey, you're going for 30 seconds. Now you're only resting for 60. So you're kind of cutting it down. You're trying to focus on shortening that time frame to increase your recovery, because that's the main point of HIIT, is to increase what's known as like your VO2 max. So the volume of oxygen that your body can utilize during exercise. In order to do that, your body needs to be able to expend a lot of energy and be able to recover from it. It's incredible. And so with HIIT, you really got to focus on, okay, having that structure. That's why some of the group classes can be a little tough, is because even though they have structure, they don't have like the structured rest breaks. Like they're not like, okay, take 90 seconds. It's always like, oh, hey, change your weights real quickly, or hey, grab a quick sip of water and let's hop back to it. So having that, time frame, that 1-to-3, 1-to-2, and when you get to be more advanced, you could even do that 1-to-1, where it's like 30 on, 30 off. And you should be ideally, the goal is to get up to doing around 10 rounds of each of those. And then, maybe increasing in rounds, or if you're a beginner, you can shorten the rounds, do somewhere like 6 to 8 rounds to start with, and then try to get up to 10. Then you can decrease the time So you can play around with it so much, which is what's really cool. And that's what makes it so beneficial is regardless of where you're at from beginner to advanced, whatever ratio you're at, you're still getting that epoch. You're still pushing that heart rate as high as you can and then dropping it back down. And so that epoch is incredible because you are providing a 6 to 15% increase in the amount of calories that your body needs, not just like on a single day, but that is, like I mentioned, lasts up to 24 hours. But if you're doing HIIT, 2 to 3 times a week, which I would recommend not doing any more than that, because of so many other things. The HIIT is great, but it also has a lot of downsides. If you're not recovering properly, you're doing it too often, you get drastic inflammation, and your sleep goes out of whack because your body's constantly stressed. Like there are a lot of downsides to overdoing it, which is why you need to be careful. Is because you really don't want to overdo HIIT, which can be very much the case for a lot of people who love taking these these intense classes, 4 or 5 times a week. You're probably overdoing it a little bit. Your body's constantly stressed. You need it to have time to recover. That is just that I cannot stress that enough. So HIIT is great because it produces the epoch, it produces the amount of calories, or it increases the amount of calories that your body needs. And if you're doing that 2 to 3 times a week, like at most, your body begins to adapt and it just continues to increase those amount of calories. Now, the reason that makes it better than strength training and steady state cardio is because with that increased calorie need over the course of the day, your body is going to be burning those calories. And since you're in that lower heart rate zone, it's going to be burning a majority of those from fat, which is what's nice. So you're going in, you're burning a lot of calories while you're doing HIIT. A majority of them are probably going to be from carbs because you're trying to get that heart rate up. So you're spending probably more, or maybe you're probably spending a little more time in that zone 3, but you are spending a lot more time in that zone 4 and 5 than you would during like strength training or steady state. And that intensity is what helps to increase the amount of calories you need. It helps to increase your VO2 max as well. So by increasing the calories that your body needs on a day-to-day basis, when you're not exercising, so the rest of the day, the rest of every other day, your body is burning all of those calories from fat. So really what you're doing is that your body is adapting to need to burn more fat. So it allows you to kind of, it allows you to eat a little bit more, and you can work on your nutrition and kind of find the macros that work for you, the micros, all those good things. And as you're doing these exercises, you're increasing the amount of calories that your body needs, allowing you to burn more fat. So I would say that's kind of the big benefit to HIIT, and why if you were on a time constraint specifically and just wanted something to really help you start the weight loss journey, or maybe you're at a plateau and you've been doing some of the other styles, that is a good way to kind of swap up to. Now, one or a couple of like differentials I want to make is one thing we mentioned just prior was that there's no single method that wins on its own. So I mentioned a lot of benefits to the HIIT training, but I touched on some of the negatives. The inflammation, the poor recovery, the poor sleep. You have to be really careful of not overdoing it. So there are, just because there's a lot of benefit doesn't mean there's not a lot of negatives. You have to kind of remember, you want to almost have everything a little bit in like moderation. You got to really be careful and thoughtful of what type of routine that you're going to be doing. So HIIT is good for that like limited time. That's the big key. Now, if what I want to get into next here is, let's say you're not limited on time. You have a dedicated time for the gym every single day, or 4 to 5 times a week, maybe even 6, depending on if if you're really invested. If you have the time, then I would actually suggest you go do more strength training. Some AMRAP, circuit training, great, whatever, suits your fancy. Just because kind of like I mentioned earlier, strength training is incredible because you are not only, if you push yourself hard enough, producing a little bit of epoch, but also you're building up muscle which will also increase the amount of calories that your body needs. So you're kind of getting like 2 for the price of 1. The big key with that is with strength training, you also you have so many other kind of not rules, but you have a lot of other things that you want to think about. Like, okay, what body parts am I going to be hitting? How many times a week should I be hitting them? How hard do I actually need to push myself versus how hard I am pushing myself to get the results that I want? So the biggest key is when you are doing strength training and you're really trying to focus on fat loss, have a well-rounded routine. So if you're working to build a routine around like fat loss, if that is like your main goal, kind of like a body composition, I guess, strength training would be kind of like your number one focus. So I would say you want to build a routine where it's like you're doing strength training maybe three to 4 times a week, and you're trying to hit every muscle group as often as you can. So twice a week it would be ideal. But I would also recommend trying to get at least 1 hit day in a week. So maybe split up. You do, maybe you do three training days, you take a little rest day, and then you do a hit day. And that leaves you with still 2 days after that hit day to kind of recover. Because with how intense hit is, you want to make sure that you're getting a rest day 1 to 2 days after, or at least active rest or recovery. So something like that steady state cardio would be great. It'd be fantastic. So having like a routine where it's like, cool, okay, you're making sure that you're doing some strength training to help build up the muscle to really allow your body to start to compound on how many calories your body needs. Because like we talked about earlier, the more muscle you have, the more you can eat. Especially in this holiday season. Sounds great to me. And then you have that hit day to just freaking go even further with that. It's like, cool, all right, we've done our strength training, we're putting on a little bit of muscle, now let's go do a hit, increase our VO2 max, get that epoch crap that Jack was talking about, and feel great. And then make sure you're getting in your steady state cardio to help promote your recovery. Stay on it. Because it really, like we talked about earlier, it's not a one size fits all. You really got to kind of combine all of them together, or 2 of them, I'd say at least. Because if you don't want to do hit, let's say, that's just, I hate trying to push myself that hard. I get nervous getting my heart rate up that high. Great. Do strength training. Stick with that. And then make sure that you're getting in that steady state cardio almost every single day. So again, if you don't have a time constraint, that's your goal. Because then you're building muscle, you're probably producing at least a little bit of the epoch, but then that steady state cardio will burn more fat for you per capita in that time frame that you are there. So on a single day basis, steady state is your friend. It just doesn't produce any epoch, or help build muscle. So over time, you're just really kind of stagnant on how much your body can burn. So that's why if you can combine that with strength training, freaking fantastic. You're the winner. It's great. Or you could even combine it with hit too. You could even do, hit, maybe you just split a hit up. You do 2 to 3 times a week of hit, and you're doing your steady state cardio 4 times a week, on the off days as well as maybe even on one of the days. So that way you're trying to ultimately promote your recovery and you're still hitting the epoch from your hit exercises. So that's kind of the cool part, is you have so many different options that you could do. The only thing that I probably wouldn't recommend is just only doing steady state cardio. And that's just because even though it is really good, it's very nice for promoting like recovery, relaxation, allows your body to de-stress, like I mentioned earlier. It is not ideal if you're trying to really just focus only on fat loss. Unless, of course, you really don't like pushing yourself in the gym. You could try and pair it up with nutrition, but that means you would really have to have like a nailed in diet. Like it's got to be freaking dialed to the T. Because there are just so many other factors that you'd have to worry about. Because, if your life is super stressful, maybe you do just kind of have chronic stress or some sort of autoimmune disease, then yeah, doing a lot of steady state cardio is very beneficial. And so that's kind of what you want to be careful of in the other two scenarios with HIIT and strength training is inflammation is a very big thing. Overtraining is very serious. And so if you're not allowing yourself that time to recover or do the steady state, you might push yourself too hard, in which case you need to take a deload week, take a week off, try to relax. So your body can kind of get back to its baseline. Just like the whole point of EPOC is your body trying to get back to its baseline. So I think those are some of the big I think if there's any big takeaways that I want for you guys to take, it's one, there's no one size fits all. The biggest thing that you can do for yourselves if you're trying to lose weight, or sorry, lose fat, is really focus on finding a rhythm or a balance between at least 2 or 3 of these different styles of training so that way you can get a balance throughout all of it and get the best results. So I would say that's like the big takeaway is like find your balance, find your routine, combining 2 to 3 of them and understanding that no one size fits all. This has been so much fun for me to like learn about and talk about. I really hope you guys have enjoyed it as well. Please let me know if you did or didn't. If you didn't, I'll just cry, but it's okay. You don't need to see that. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening in. Really, if you guys did like it, please leave a like, subscribe, let me know. Share it with your friends, please, as well, because as this new year comes out, I'm so excited for what we're going to be doing. And I think 2026 is going to be really a big year of growth. So I appreciate you guys joining me for this last episode for this year. And I really appreciate you guys. I really do. So please like it, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. Share with your friends. And let me know what you guys thought. If you have any questions, maybe I missed something, let me know. All right. Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Take care.